there's some credibility behind why people respect and like Adam Beck. His inventions, his contributions, his takes, whether or not you agree, like he has authentically earned the respect of a large group of people. I think Richard would know there's no authenticity behind it. I think he's Trump-like in some ways, in that if someone criticizes Adam Beck, it's like water off a duck's back. It just bounces off him. He doesn't care. Anyone who criticizes Richard Hart becomes a mortal enemy for them. Like, I don't think I've even spoken about him, for a couple of years since I last did that video.
Yeah, definitely not on...
He still, like, fucking doesn't... He still goes after me. It's like 2 years later. It's like, move on, man. But so I think there's like... It's almost like Trump. You know how Trump could not take any criticism.
It's because they're a fringe community and they need bigger adversaries to sort of give them relevance again. So they're always trying to rope in. So, for example, I left the HEX community.
Left it? You were in it? Was that a slip of the tongue? Were you a Hexican?
I got sucked in. No, I wasn't a Hexican, but I got sucked into their, psychosis. I was in there.
What?
I took a role. I saw this cult, this movement in complete disarray. And many of them were scared, many of them were confused, and they were desperately trying to interpret the word of Richard, because their entire financial future depended on what Richard says. And he was speaking in very vague language. And I sort of took the role of explaining what Richard is saying. Because he's talking about, he was trying to fork Ethereum. And when you're forking Ethereum, this goes into, what's an Aragon client, what's a sync stage, and all these complicated things that Hexicans don't understand. So I took the role of basically trash talking Richard, but at the same time also explaining what were the technical difficulties that he was facing. And because of that, the HEX community started to rely on me. And some of them started also to see the points that I've been making all along, that it's much harder to launch a layer 1 blockchain than it is to just create a smart contract on top of Ethereum, which HEX is. So they started to rely on me, and we had some sort of symbiotic relationship where they loved to hate me, and I loved being hated by them. But I became sort of a part of the HEX community, and there was a lot of banter, and it just got to the point, where my cryptocurrency friends like Udi and Hasu and other people were like, Eric, you're spending way too much time.
Did you have an intervention?
I had an intervention.
You were in a cult.
I wasn't in a cult. Well, I was I was spending a lot of time with the cult because I thought that I was on an anthropological mission of, what do you call it? Like a scribe, a narrator.
A mission from God.
Yeah, I was there with the purpose of, someone needs to tell the story of all the madness and insanity that goes on inside that cult, because one day there's going to be a movie made from that. And there were Netflix level documentary teams that were actually flying into Portugal to allow me to speak about what's going on there. And I thought that I was bringing a much needed color to this. This is one of the largest financial schemes in financial history. This is one of the longest running, financial psychosis that has ever happened, sort of in the world. And I was the one with the most intel, so I thought of it as my responsibility to sort of just tell the story and keep track of what people are saying and what is going wrong and what is actually happening. Because I was the only one that understood it. And I thought that I could do it from an unbiased perspective, and I thought that I had a responsibility to bring to the world this story. And I spent an insane amount of time doing that, and that's when my friends sort of came and said, Eric, you got to stop with this HEX thing. And I was telling them, look, this film team is coming in 2 weeks from now. Like, there's going to be a documentary, and I'm going to be the main antagonist. And they're like, Eric, it's gone too far. You have to step away. You have so much potential, and there are other things that you could focus your energy on. And so I left. I unfollowed all the Hexican people. I stopped engaging with them. I didn't post in their threads. I didn't argue with them anymore. And for a while, I was slightly depressed because I had a very big personality in the Hex community. Like I was in the world of Hex. There's Richard Hart, and then there's Eric Wall. Like those were the Christ and the Antichrist. And I
Hold
enjoyed.
on, which one were you?
I was the Antichrist.
Huh.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that because it got me into places and it got me into things that made my life more exciting, because I would never have, that doesn't happen to me in regular life. Like being that big of an antagonist comes with special perks to it.
Like what?
Well, there are people within the Hex community where their faith is sort of faltering, and then they go to the Antichrist, and then the Antichrist is now their new god that they start to listen to instead.
So you had a spin-off cult.
Yeah, so sort of within like
This is fucking mental.
it was mental, but it was insanely entertaining at the same time. And I thought that when this thing eventually collapses, the entire Hex cult would eventually just, I could take them, like they would now understand that what Eric has been saying is the truth.
And they would adore you.
It's not necessarily adoration that I was looking for, but I thought that this is a big community that I could now steer for a better purpose. And that would
Eric
be...
coin.
I wasn't going to drop a new cryptocurrency. Well, maybe, the Erica Simp DAO. Do you remember that?
No.
Well, I had like a female alter ego. I was going to create...
Oh, Erica.
Yeah, I was going to create like...
She's kind of hot.
She is kind of hot. So I mean, the things that happened in the Hex community was just on a different scale, on a different level, from a completely different universe from anything that I've been used to, and I was excited about that. So when I left, I was like, okay, now I'm just regular, non-Antichrist Eric, just regular Eric, and I got a little bit depressed for a couple of weeks. I was like, I told my partner that I think I'm heading into depression, because I left all these Hex channels. I just unfold. It was like a big part of my personality that I eliminated, and that what happened a month after that, almost immediately after that, was that I started to work on my own projects. Like I actually started to work on projects that. Bitcoin projects. I was actually starting to do the things that I've been, putting off, and focusing my time on that. And
no wild parties, no adoration.
No, but I got into things like I started 2 companies, like passion projects of mine that are going tremendously well. I got into AI animation. So I was making AI animation where I was talking about philosophical things, and they became like the most watched videos on particular subreddits, and I was getting a different kind of message out, things that I wanted to say for years. And I was flying out of my bed each morning because I was so excited about the things that I was working on.
But did you miss the Hex people?
No, I mean, no, I realized at that point that what my friends had been saying, that, yeah, I mean, you're getting some things out of, being this Hex figure, but there's so much more that you're missing out on. And that was true. So once I stopped with the Hex nonsense, there was another world for me that I had been missing out on. And now I'm like, this year, it's been like my rebirth year, where I can actually focus on things that isn't, being a part of a crazy cult.
This is makes me think of Point Break.
I've not seen Point Break.
You've not seen Point Break? The fuck? Oh man, you gotta see that film where Keanu Reeves goes undercover with the police. Undercover for the police to infiltrate a gang, and starts to get to the moment where you feel like he likes being in the gang. And then at the end of this gang, this is like your Point Break. I didn't realize we were going to talk about all this. Asking about Hex was meant to be more of a joke. The fuck, man? That's wild.
Yeah.
What is Pulse Chain like their Ethereum?
Yeah, so Pulse Chain was supposed to be, what he promised was that he was going to fork Ethereum, but it was going to be faster and it was going to have proof of stake before Ethereum had it.
Yeah.
So it was going to launch before, and it was going to have more scalability, and it would have faster blocks and all that. In the end, they weren't able to launch Pulse Chain before Ethereum. Now it's launched after Ethereum, and
So it has launched.
Oh, sorry, there's a testnet for it.
Does it work?
Barely. So the window up, they tried to get into this when the fees in Ethereum were extremely high. That's when they started. Now the Ethereum fees are low, and now they have this clone of Ethereum, which there isn't really a purpose for anymore. And they've also, instead of making Ethereum better, which was the thing that they were going to do by making blocks faster, now it's just a carbon copy. Like now he says, we don't want to change the fantastic math that the Ethereum people have done because they've already solved it. So now it's just a complete copy paste of Ethereum.
But when Ethereum makes upgrades, do they have to upgrade the same? How does that all work?
Yeah, so this is pretty funny. So when a couple of months ago he was asked, so in Pulse Chain, are you going to be able to withdraw your Pulse tokens when you stake them? And Richard was like, yeah, I think that we've solved that. And then we spoke to his devs a couple of days later, and they're like, no, we're actually just copy pasting Ethereum, so we have to wait for them to make withdrawals possible before they're going to be possible in our project. And at that point, that's actually when I started to call. I've been very careful with calling HEX a scam.
Oh, I would never do that.
Yeah, I mean, I choose that word very, specifically when I call something a scam. So I haven't called it a scam. I've called it like a transparently slanted game that goes to enrich a particular party. But if it's transparent, people know about it, it's not a scam, in my opinion. But now when it's like the promises that he had made about Pulse Chain, and then seeing what he's delivering in reality, and also seeing how little he knows about what he's actually delivering, that's when I'm at the point where, this is actually, like, if the way, he said there's going to be tons of bugs in Ethereum. It's going to be unusable. They don't know how to build this. We're going to do Pulse Chain, and it's going to be much better. And now he's just copy pasting Ethereum, and it's not better at all. It just comes out later, and all the upgrades that they are getting is downstream from Ethereum. And they raised $1 billion for this. That is a scam. That is a scam.
What's Pulse X?
Pulse X is like a Uniswap application that runs on top of Pulse Chain. So the same way that Ethereum has Uniswap. So that's just one application, also raised $1 billion.
A separate $1 billion?
A separate $1 billion.
And is that a separate $1 billion for Richard?
For Richard.
So he probably has multiple billions of dollars.
So actually, a part of those donation amounts were done in HEX. And he's promised not to sell that part. But if you actually look at just the stable coin and the Ethereum parts, if you combine both of them, that it's like $1 billion in total. But yeah, people sacrificed. They sacrificed $1.8 billion.
So when you say donations, that's like the HEX community sacrificing their HEX to go into this new Pulse Chain.
Yeah, they say that they're sacrificing their money for freedom of speech, and that they're not expecting anything in return. Even though
it passes the Howey test, or supposedly passes the Howey. Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a website that says if you deposit, if you sacrifice this amount of money, you get these many points, and these points translates into how many tokens that you get. So you are actually getting an amount of tokens, and the value of these tokens are completely dependent on whether or not Richard Hart launches Pulse Chain or not. So it is 100%
obviously,
a security. And they're even getting subpoenas at this point. The funniest thing.
Yeah, I've seen that.
They're getting subpoenas, and all these HEX influencers who are like, you should have bought HEX when I did, because now I'm like infinitely rich. They are out on Twitter now because they're getting subpoenas, and they have $10,000 of legal fines that they have to pay. And they're they're having these threads like, could you please donate to me so that I can afford these legal fees? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I thought that you were like a millionaire or a billionaire because you bought HEX early. Why are you asking publicly on Twitter for a $10,000 donation so you can handle the legal fees? And why isn't Richard scooping in to give you some money to handle with the legal fees? So it just delusion, like a moment of disillusion where you realize that actually these Hexagon people aren't that, like most of them sort of bought HEX at the top and now it's down like 80%. So many of them are not actually in. But the genius thing about it is that HEX is so inflationary. So in order to not get diluted into nothing, you have to stake. And you have to stake more than the average amount. You have to stake your HEX for more than 3,333 days. So you have to stake it, what is it, like eight years? That's the only way that you're not getting diluted. But then you're actually locked up for 8 years. And then you're in the situation where all your capital, you can't even get it back until 8 years. So the only thing that you can do is just say that Richard is God on earth and everyone should listen to him. Because that's the only way that you're going to be able to get some fraction of your money out of that thing.